This is a lesson on multiplying fractions, and it goes along with lesson 8-10 of Scott Forsman Math. Our objective today is for you, the students, to be able to multiply fractions, and we're going to be doing that by multiplying the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator, and then simplifying. And this is going to be the key part today, simplifying. You have to have an effective strategy for simplifying. So in order to succeed in this lesson, you're going to have to know, number one, simplifying fractions. Two, there's going to be some times when you turn improper fractions into mixed numbers. And then the divisibility rules, right? So the divisibility rules of 2, 3, 5, and 10, they help us do that. All right, so you'll hear me say a couple of times about the divisibility rules. All right, so multiplying fractions, what are the steps to multiplying fractions? One of them is simplifying, and again, you have to have an effective strategy today. All right, so we are doing numerator times the numerator and denominator times the denominator. So if we do something like 2/3 times 1/2, you multiply the 2 times the 1 and get 2, and the 3 times the 2 and get 6, and then you simplify by finding the greatest common factor, which is 2, and you divide each one of these by 2 and get 1/3. All right, so it's pretty straightforward, right? But let's just see why this is happening or why this is working. First of all, that multiplication symbol, at times you're not going to see the multiplication symbol. You will see this word, of, and of means multiply. So if I have 2/3 of 1/2, I'm going to find 1/2, and then I'm going to find 2/3 of that, and I can just draw pictures for that. So here is 1 whole, and I'm going to make it 1/2. There's a half. Now, there's my 1/2, right? So this one is represented by 1/2. Now I need to find 2/3 of that 1/2. And I'm going to do that by getting a different color and drawing a couple lines. All right, so now I've cut that 1/2 into 3 equal parts, and here's 1/3 of that, and here is another third of that. And so that's our answer, 1, 2 out of this whole. Well, what is that whole? It's made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts. Get the right color here. So that's 1, 2 out of 3, 4, 5, 6 parts. So that's 6 parts and 2. Hello, that's the same thing, right? So visually, this is what it looks like. You're going to see this today, but really what we're doing is that times that, that times that. All right, continuing on. All right, here's our example problems, and we're going to do the same strategy here. This times that. So writing down our problem, 2 times 3 equals 6, 3 times 5 equals 15, and not in its simplest form there. So again, this is our strategy for simplifying. That's 2 times 3, and then 15 will be 3 times 5. And so what is our common factor there? It's 3. So dividing by 3 equals 2, divided by 3 equals 5. So there's our answer to 2/3 times 3/5. And again, the key, simplifying. All right, some people are going to be mystified by B because they're going to say, oh, there's no fraction there. And we've been going over that for many months now, right? So it's 2/3 times 24. Well, how do I turn that 24 into a fraction? Anything over 1. Take any whole number and you put it over 1, that equals 24. So it's 24 over 1. And now it's 5 times 24. And if you can't do that in your head, where should you do it? Off to the side somewhere. 24 times 5. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 2. So it's 120. Oops, I wrote 128. It should be 120 over 8. All right, so that's obviously not in its simplest form, and it's an improper fraction. So I am going to divide 120 by 8 in order to get my mixed number. And so that's 1 remainder of 40, and then that would be 5. So it would be 15. And that is in its simplest form there, obviously, with no remainder, right? So it's not 15 and 0/8, it's just 15, because we just take the 0/8 and not write it. Being good mathematicians, we know that that has no value. It doesn't need to be in our problem at all. All right, so here's a couple guided practice problems. One is 3/5 times 1/2, and again, it's numerator times numerator, denominator times the denominator. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 2 is 10. What do the factors have in common? The 3, 2, and 5 over here, so they have nothing in common, so the greatest factor is 1, and that's in its simplest form. Here's another example problem, 3/4 times 3, and again, we're going to take that whole number and turn it into a fraction by putting a 1 underneath it, and then it becomes 3 times 3 equals 9, 4 times 1 equals 4, and then we have 9/4 improper fraction, and your brain should immediately launch into, hey, I need to divide to get that improper fraction taken care of into a mixed number. 4 times 2 is 8. I had 9, I used 8, and I have 1 left over, and that thing that I have left over is a 4th, so it's 2 1/4. How do I know that's in its simplest form? Numerator's 1. Always in its simplest form. All right, now here's a couple times here we're going to see this word. All right, whenever you see that word and we're doing fractions, that means multiply. So it really means 1/3 times 12. And once you know that and set up your problem correctly, the math really isn't that hard today. So it's 1 times 12 equals 12, and 3 times 1 equals 3. 12/3, and again, improper fractions, you should immediately launch into, I need to, divide here. 3 times 4 equals 12. The remainder is 0, so that is 4. Please don't be one of those people, 4 and 0/3. Technically, it would be right, but good mathematicians aren't going to do that. Last guided practice problem is 3/4 of 3/4, and again, of means multiply, so it's 3/4 times 3/4. 3 times 3 equals 9. 4 times 4 equals 16. Now finding the greatest common factor. 9 is 3 times 3. 16 is 4 times 4, and 2 times 2, and 2 times 2. So it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. This one's 3 times 3. They don't have anything in common, and so this is in its simplest form. Common mistakes. Simplification becomes weird sometimes. So it's 11/12, and you're going to multiply that by 3/4, and you say 11 times 3, that equals 33, and that equals 48, and you're like, oh, that's in its simplest form. But it isn't, right? You have to go through the steps and make sure that you see things, right? So this is 3 times 11, so 33 equals 3 times 11, and then 48 equals 6 times 8, which is 2 times 3, and this one's 2 times 4, and 2 times 2, so it equals all of these things together. So it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And here we have a common factor. So this must be simplified by 3. And that would turn into 11, and then people can't do that in their head sometimes, so it's subtract division time 16, 11 over 16. All right, so go through the process of simplification, especially on the ones that are more difficult. And here's our task today. H8-10 out of the homework book, and we're doing all the problems 1 through 14. Reminder, you have to have an effective strategy.